Hey, this is Savannah with Savvy Shoots Photography, and I'm sitting here today with Rachel Hannan with Ray Hannan Events. Today we're just going to have a little conversation about wedding planning, wedding coordination, and see if that's something that would benefit you and some just average wedding planning questions. All right, so we're going to get started here. Rachel, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long you've been in the industry? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, my name's Rachel. I own Ray Hannan Events, and I have been in the industry for going on about 2 years now. And yeah, I saw a need when I was a bride myself and decided that it was something that I really wanted to dive into to provide another solution in the industry that I wasn't seeing, and just, to be of assistance to brides that were like me.
So what would you say is the difference between like a planner versus a coordinator?
So there is a really big difference.
Yeah.
And the need for either one is very subjective to the couple and what they're looking for. A coordinator is what I would call like that crunch time person, somebody that's going to come in toward the end, those last few months or last few weeks even before your wedding, to tie everything together, and they're running the day. So it doesn't take out really any planning from a couple's plate, which in some cases is totally fine, but they just want everything off their plate come the day of their wedding. That's what a coordinator is really for. No coordinator offers the same exact things. And so that's what's cool. You can shop around and see what things you're needing per your venue and all of those things. So a planner is really someone who's going to be by your side the entire time. Same thing. None of them have the same exact packages and offerings. Most of the time, a planner also includes day of coordination, most of the time. So you're going to have someone that's with you from the start or pretty early on in your planning process all the way to the end.
How soon should you book a wedding planner?
A planner, I would book as soon as you know you want assistance, which is pretty early on. Planners do book out further depending on if they're working independently or with a team. That can also, be a variable. But I would book a planner if you're needing that full-on assistance as soon as you either get engaged or find the venue pretty early on. A coordinator, I would say also as soon as you can, but sometimes you can wait a little bit closer to the day, maybe 6 to 8 months out if you have a longer engagement. 3 to 6 months, you just might have difficulty finding someone who's available on your date, but you can start looking at that point as well.
Perfect. And how do you know if you need assistance? Like, how do you know if you need a planner or if you need a coordinator? Tell us about that.
This is a very good question. It's kind of hyper independent to the couple. So if you kind of need to check inward, is what I tell my couples or anyone that I'm talking to about this. If you are aware of what's on your plate and what you do not want on your plate when it comes to your wedding, that's when I would say, okay, think about what you don't want to be doing. If you don't want to be exchanging a lot of emails with your vendors, you don't want to be communicating a lot with them because you have a lot of work going on. You might have kids at home. You might have other responsibilities that you're just like, yes, I know I want to get married, but I really can't plan this. I would have someone along, with you that entire time. Some people really enjoy the planning process. They want to be involved in the nitty-gritty of it. They want to do these things. That's when I would say you want a coordinator. I really haven't met a wedding who doesn't need some sort of coordination or assistance. And by that, I don't say couple. I mean, I haven't met a wedding that didn't need something, whether I was a guest or actually working that wedding going, so glad they hired us, because you really need that assistance to enjoy your day.
Yeah. And I'd say even from like a photographer perspective, when there is a coordinator, our lives are way easier because if there's not, we play coordinator half the time. And then we're like trying to juggle pictures and trying to juggle, make sure you're here. And if like everyone has their own job, I think your day goes way smoother. And plus as a bride, like you don't have to worry about your decorations are set up on time or if they're, any of those things.
Right.
So.
If everyone showed up on time for vendors and where Aunt Sally is, we know, we're on it. We understand. So the bride doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I did not have a coordinator. I wish I did for my wedding. When a couple is looking for a wedding venue, what should they look for in a venue? As someone who's been to a lot of venues.
Again, I think it's pretty subjective to the couple. First, look at what you want. If you think about not even budget at first. I mean, budget is a huge player in this category, but think about what you want. What is the aesthetic? Are we doing indoor, outdoor? What do they offer there? Are you looking for more inclusive to take things off of your plate where you're not sure about a planner or coordinator, but you aren't wanting to do everything? You may want to look for a venue that's more inclusive, meaning they have in-house bar, in-house, sometimes in-house DJ, in-house catering. They have dessert options there for you. somewhere that will include it and just give you options instead of you having to find an outside vendor. That's some people's cup of tea because they really don't want to plan their entire wedding and have to go seek out these vendors. That's very helpful. Now, some people just go, I love this space. I don't care if I have to have 25 vendors in here. One, I would say hire a planner, but also that's fantastic. So it really depends on the couple. I would say look for your dream, elements first. There might be something you've always dreamed of, whether it's the way the dance floor looks, the way the walls are decorated, the way the venue looks on the outside for your ceremony. So many factors, but look for what you and your partner are truly wanting. And then budget will come into play, always with a venue. And again, that goes through like, what do they offer versus what are we going to have to bring in at another expense?
So that brings me to, do you know like an average spend of like a wedding or that you've worked with, or for like I don't know, is it like an average spend for like either the Michigan or Detroit area?
Yeah, I'm not positive. I have worked with many different size weddings. The biggest thing is always going to be your guest count, looking at keeping it under a certain price point. I would say if you were to be hiring standard vendors, we're talking photographers, videographers, a DJ, give or take a florist. A lot of people are opting for artificial now, so that really is up in the air, even though both ways are great. If you're hiring some pretty standard vendors, I don't see many people being under the $40,000 range for maybe an average of 100 to 150 person wedding. You can obviously find ways to cut costs in many different ways without sacrificing the look and feel of your wedding, but I would expect to pay for those things.
What would you say is some of the biggest challenges for a couple, like during the wedding planning process?
Always gonna be budget is number one, because money is stressful. Whether you have, whether you're budgeting and being conscious of your money, whether you have a lot of it, it's really stressful any which way you put it, because you're spending a lot of your hard-earned money on what a lot of people view as one day. And while in some cases that is true, I always encourage my couples to really, really stay in communication with one another, to be on the same page. And usually what I find couples struggle with is to get what both of their dream items are. For example, a bride might really, really, really want a dress that is a pretty high, but spend. But if that's what she really wants, I always encourage my couples to just tell each other what they want. If the groom says this venue is it for me, we have to get married at this venue, and the bride's on board with that, they should mesh those things, and those should be their top 2 spends. Always pick a top 2 or 3 spends and budget for those first, because everything else can be figured out. But I do tell my couples, and I've seen it happen, that they will regret if they don't pull those elements in, because that's what they truly want. And that's what makes the day go beyond one day. Because you're going to have pictures of it, you're going to have video of it, and you'll never regret buying the really big dress that you wanted, no matter how much it was, because it's what you wanted. Same thing with venues. Sometimes it's a photographer or videographer they really, really want to work with. I always suggest that they splurge on those things. If it's splurge for them, they should.
Like, I'm going to piggyback off of that, because that's something I've been seeing so much recently is like people complaining like, oh, it's just one day, which I guess maybe, but at the same time, it's not, because it's going to be documented forever. Like, your kids are going to look at this. Your grandkids are going to look at this. You're going to remember this one. It's one day of your whole life that you've been dreaming about for most of your life.
Right.
So, why not go big or go home? Because you're probably never going to have that. You will not have that day again.
You won't have the day again. And it's really fun to celebrate it later on by way of documentation. Your friends and family will remember those things, because it just makes for a happier couple at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
And you really do. I mean, as a bride myself, I'm sure you know too, it's like you really do remember those things that you got. You're like, I loved this part of our wedding. There's always something that you might look back at and think, okay, I would have done that differently. That's life. But the wedding day really does go beyond the day when you're making decisions for yourselves as a couple, not for grandparents and not for aunts and uncles that have opinions, and they all mean very well most of the time. But yeah, I always tell people, stick to your true wants for the day. It's so easy to get lost in it, especially with social media, and lost in what we should and could be doing at our events. But keep it focused on each other, and you're not going to make too many missteps as a couple at that point in time.
Is there anything that you've seen at a wedding that like you'll remember forever? Like a couple did something like super cool and like you're like, wow, this was unique.
For the first time, this past fall, I did have a couple do live tattoos at their wedding. It's not that I ever thought I hadn't seen it before, but I had never implemented it at a wedding that I planned. And so, you know, after my side of things of planning with liability, making sure everything was safe and secure, it was so cool. And I was truly surprised at how many people got tattoos. It was super cool. And I have another client that's doing it again this summer.
I love that. So, like, did they only have a specific kind of tattoo that they could choose from? Okay.
Yeah, they made what they call a flash sheet.
Okay.
And I actually personally don't have any tattoos, so this was all really a cool learning curve for me, especially as a planner, because everyone's so different and sometimes it's just what people want. I learned a lot from the artists themselves. They brought things and they've done what they call pop-ups before. And so they knew the waiver, the liability forms that everyone would need to fill out. There's a flash sheet of certain tattoos that came in one size only that they came up with the couple. So some of them had the couple's initials and the wedding date on it. Some were just inside jokes that a lot of their friends knew about. It was really unique, very unique. And people were getting them all night. It was very interesting. It was cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
Have there been any major hiccups that you've noticed at a wedding?
Not any wedding that I've planned.
Or was there something that often gets forgotten?
Yeah. Usually in talking to couples, especially when it's maybe more of that last minute, like we're in the last few months, hey, I actually think we need a coordinator. I would always boil it down to logistics of the day. Yes, people make timelines. That's great. A lot of things get missed in timelines. I like to say to my clients that are hiring me in for those last few months for day of coordinating, I say I like to poke holes in your timeline so we don't have to find them on your wedding day or the week before your wedding. You know, I don't like to count that as time that we should be finishing up a timeline. Let's get this down pat. Usually it's logistics of who needs to be somewhere and when, and it's rarely ever the bride and groom that are in the wrong spot. It's parents, family members, the wedding party. That's a lot of what I find is people not knowing where they're supposed to be for pictures, video content, things after the ceremony. They get a little bit confused. They might join cocktail hour. Now we're like wrangling a whole wedding party. Another huge one is set up and tear down. Who's going to do it? How are we going to do it? And, you know, where is all of our decor going at the end of the night? If it's decor that's owned by the bride and groom or by the, you know, any parents or anything like that. So those are things that are really important to think about. And if it really stresses you out to think about them, you probably need a coordinator.
Awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
That actually happened at my wedding too. Didn't have any plans for tear down. And I literally don't know where everything went. Like 2 weeks later, we're like, where did this go? Where did that go?
Hey, wait a second. Where did that go?
So great point. Great point.
Yeah.
Something else I have noticed, like bustles. Like, do you plan for time for a bustle like during the wedding day?
I usually ask the brides ahead of time, even if it's a few weeks ahead of time, hey, you know, does your maid of honor know how to bustle your dress? Or does your mom or your aunt or, you know, whoever else, like maybe I pick 2 people. Do 2 bridesmaids know? Because if the maid of honor's in the restroom and it's bustle time, we can't wait. So there's, you know, I like to stick to the timeline. Sometimes it's great to be flexible. But bustle is definitely something we factor in if they have one. Not everybody has a bustle, but I like to ask. Yes, it's a great thing.
I have seen that. It's like so often, like
especially as a photographer.
Yeah, you're like, okay, where are they at? Like they're all bustled, or I've had to bustle because they're like, wait a minute, we don't know what we're doing.
Exactly.
You know, and so
I always suggest to my brides when I'm working with them a little more full time. I always suggest to them that when they go to the seamstress for, you know, even to pick up their dress, that you take a video of her doing it. Or them, you know, bustling their dress, because then we can always whip that video out, whether it's us watching it, you know, as a photographer or a planner to figure it out if we've never seen it, or the maid of honor, you know, might not remember all these months later after their first fitting or anything like that. So I always tell people to take a video of getting your dress bustled, and then someone will be able to get it done.
I feel like that's such a small detail that just
honestly,
don't always think about.
To go along with that too, now that you mentioned it, the groomsmen's ties or bow ties often are not pre-done. So a lot of times none of the guys know how to tie the tie the same way. And obviously as a photographer, you don't want to have like something that's not as uniform because they just didn't know how to tie them. So I usually recommend make sure the night before all these guys are watching, if they need to watch a YouTube video or if there's only one guy that knows how to tie these bow ties or the, you know, the neckties, make sure they pre-tie all the guys, you know, hang them on a thing. Even for our wedding, we had them all pre-tied and all their pocket squares were all pre-done. And we just handed them out in the morning because that will definitely suck up time in your timeline when the guys are getting ready.
Those boutonnieres.
Oof.
Boutonnieres. I've also seen like people poking themselves as they're trying to put it on. They get blood on the suit. Like, just like,
Yep.
have a plan.
Yes.
Have a plan.
Some sort of plan
Yeah.
to get it done. Definitely have done a few last minute boutonniere, adjustments. Like, who put this on you? They're about to walk down the aisle and I'm looking like, guys, no, we need to fix this now.
Yeah. Anything else that we haven't talked about that, couples should be aware of when they're planning their wedding or working with venues or vendors?
There's a whole list of things, I would say, but really, really important is to truly, as a couple, determine a few things up front before you start into the vendor search, before you start signing contracts. Really, really look into who you're hiring. Whether it was a reference from somebody else, you might have found them on a search through a popular wedding website. That's fantastic. Read reviews. There are a lot of places to read reviews and look at their work. By all means, you can ask the vendors questions if you have them ahead of time before even inquiring about their services. You can ask them questions. But mainly, I would say be on the same page as your partner's budget, because when you go seek out these vendors, they're going to need to know, what that is. They're going to need to know your guest count. They'll need to know where you're getting married. So couples definitely should make sure that they're reading the full contract with any vendor, because they might not have any questions because the contract could be very clear, but questions should be asked before you sign those contracts. They are legally binding, and should something happen, it's a great reference point. So I do recommend that my couples always read through their contracts. I'm always happy to look over them as well, if they just want another set of eyes on them. And also, I do recommend that they always make sure they get a countersigned document, because it's not as common as people may think to get that countersigned one back, and that could hurt couples in the end. I've seen it happen, which is very unfortunate, and I've heard about those stories of people that don't have that, so they actually don't have a leg to stand on because the vendor decides that, well, we never actually signed it, and that's why they didn't show on your day. So it's a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of couples. So yeah, just really, really pay attention to those details in your planning process, because then it gives you a better relationship with your vendors. Everything's locked in and that you're in agreement about what their services are going to be for your day. And when you have questions, you can look back on a true contract that you both agreed on and, point to that if you need to discuss anything with them through the planning process.
Perfect. And where can people find you if they're interested, if they're in Michigan looking for wedding planning or coordination?
My company's name is Hannan Events. And RayHannanEvents.com is my website. You can inquire through there. My phone number and email are on there as well, so you can reach out to me. And always happy to have a couple calls to talk about what you might need for your day. For any couples, I do get a lot of calls from parents that are wanting assistance as well in the day. So happy to talk to whatever family member I need to, and how I can best serve them.
Well, thank you for coming and chatting today, and hopefully this was helpful for some couples out there planning their wedding.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining us today. If you're interested in some more wedding content or some help with planning your wedding, feel free to subscribe to our channel.